Welcome to another episode of Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. This is a show which highlights the importance of estate planning and why everyone needs to do it. And of course, the unfortunate consequences of what happens far too often when people have not planned. I'm your host, John Braddock, author of Click Here When I Die, and the founder of My Life and Wishes, The Legacy Vault, an online planning and document storage solution created to make things easier for those you love. Today, I'm excited to introduce to you attorney Michael Porter. Let me share a little bit with you about Mike before I bring him on the stage here. He is the founder and CEO of Faith Mountain Legacy Services in Spearfish, South Dakota. Mike is a distinguished legal mind with a rich tapestry of experience spanning 3 decades. Admitted to practice in the courts of the state of South Dakota and its Supreme Court in 1989. Mike's expertise expands across various domains, including real estate, estate planning, and probate law. His commitment to legal excellence is evidenced by his memberships in the esteemed organizations such as the American Bar Association's real estate, estate planning, and probate sections, and the American Trial Lawyers Association, among a few others. As the past president of the West River State and Financial Planning Council and executive council member of the South Dakota State Bars Association's Realty, Property, and Probate section, he has continually demonstrated leadership and dedication to the profession. Beyond the courtroom, Mike's altruistic spirit shines through his extensive involvement in civic services and charitable organizations. From serving as board chairman for Bella, a CareNet pregnancy resource center, to volunteering for causes like South Dakota's Teen Pact, his commitment to community welfare is unwavering. A passionate advocate for education and knowledge sharing, Mike is a frequent lecturer and presenter at seminars and forums on estate planning, financial planning, and long-term care issues. His dedication to staying abreast of legal developments and sharing his insights underscores his commitment to empowering others with his valuable information. Despite his professional achievements, Mike remains grounded in family and nature, residing in the picturesque Black Hills of South Dakota with his beloved wife of 34 years. Together, they cherish their moments with their 4 children, daughter-in-law, and new grandson, embracing the beauty of outdoor adventures like gardening, camping, and skiing. So it's an honor to have Mike join us today, where I'm sure his wealth of experience and compassionate perspective promises to enlighten and inspire us all. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, John. Great to be here, and you're making me blush, my friend.
Well, you know, I try to do a little research so I know who we're chatting with, even though you and I have gotten to know each other for a bit now. So
you bet.
So hey, spring is upon us. How are things up in South Dakota?
Right on. Beautiful today. We picked up 4 or 5 inches of snow about 2 days ago. 60 degrees today, and the snow is all but gone. So typical March, spring, April weather for South Dakota. It's all good.
You can get that snow, but the good news is it's going to be gone in a day or two, right?
That's right, which means I don't have to shovel it.
Well, you know, since you got that new grandson, just a few years from now, he'll be able to help you.
I'm already thinking down that road. Yeah. I got plans for him.
Yeah, terrific. Hey, as I always like to get started, Mike, as you know, I love to talk about passion, you know, the why behind people do what they do, why they get up, you know, in the morning. Can you elaborate a little bit for us and our audience as to, you know, why estate planning and why it's important to you to help people plan and create their legacy?
Yeah, you bet. You know, and Heidi hit on this, and I think David did as well. It's the proactive part of the practice of law that I much more appreciate than all the reactive stuff. I spent about 18 and a half years before really going into trust administration and probate administration, and for about 16 years of that, and then only recently back into the legal practice. But everything was reactive, except for the estate planning I did, some of the real estate stuff, the adoption work that I did, even to an extent, I did aviation law as well, and to an extent, hangar leases, joint ownership on aircraft, things like that are proactive in a sense. But the FAA issues that pilots would get crosswise with, that's all reactive, and it's just being on the front end, and particularly with estate planning, is just so rewarding. I've numerous times I've sat across the desk in my office with families that have gone through the loss of a family member, usually at the top, so either a patriarch or a matriarch. And about 20 minutes into the conversation, when you're sliding that box of tissues across the desk to somebody who's just melting down, going, why didn't dad do this? Why didn't they finish this? Why didn't they follow through with this? Why didn't they execute their plan? They talked about it, they just didn't get it done. And those are just miserable conversations to have with people when you're laying out the landscape of, okay, this is what it's going to look like now going forward. And the one thing that I remember a lot is when I first started, there was I call him the older gentleman lawyer that every town has. He sat me down in his office one day and we were having a conversation. He said, Mike, you're going to see 2 times when you'll find out how thick a family is: when one of them dies and when one of them strikes oil. And boy, I'm telling you what, that no truer words have ever been spoken. I'm telling you, I've seen it time and time and time again in families that I never thought I'd see that happen in. And sure enough, it did. And honestly, the only reason that happens is poor planning. I mean, there's no other way to cut it. So
Absolutely.
that's my why. I don't like having those conversations, so I try to educate people as much as I can. So you know what, these are your options. That's why I do seminars for senior citizens groups and seminars for the Legion and the VFW and folks like that. Is just to get the word out. Look, you don't have to stumble in the dark. Get a plan, figure out what the options are, sit down with somebody and find competent legal counsel who knows what they're doing with it.
Absolutely. It's the passion, as you mentioned, Heidi and David, and some of our others who have been on the show. Everyone shares that common thread. And the thing is, the work that you do, the work that we do with our legacy book, it is designed to make things easier for those you love.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the key. And so when I talk to people all the time, they're like, yeah, I know I need to get it done or finish it up, and I haven't done it, and that kind of stuff. And kind of my smart ass response always is, hey, don't you don't want to rush into getting that done. I mean,
right.
just but if you want some motivation, just think about what you want the experience to be like for your family.
Exactly. That's it. Exactly.
Pretty easy. So, well, that's awesome, and I just love it. So again, we call the show Estate Planning Nightmares, and why did I name it that? Well, I've learned through all my years, and you and I come from the same page. We've got a lot of them, years. The best way to get people to think about things is through stories, right? And it's the stories, that are there that aren't necessarily designed to scare them, but to get them to understand the realities, of things that may happen because they've happened to other people who haven't planned. And so, Mike, through your years of experience in helping people, I know you've seen a lot of the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And so as we were talking earlier before we went live, can you share a story or two that may be helpful?
You bet.
Great.
Absolutely. And I think I'll start out with a success story just to kind of throw that out there as an encourager for the rest of the folks that are watching. But and then I'll hit you with a nightmare that you and I have talked about, which it turned out okay ultimately, but it took a lot of money and a couple of years to get there, and it worked, but it wasn't certainly not due to any planning on the part of the decedent, unfortunately. So success story, I had a few years back, I was a trust officer for a local bank, and a gentleman called and made an appointment. He says, I'm working on an estate plan with one of your local council here in the area, and I'd like to come in and talk to you about it. And I'm shopping for somebody to step in as successor trustee when I pass away. So, okay, come on in. So we sat down and visited. He appreciated, where we were coming from and my philosophies on administration and so on and so forth. I took a look at his documents. Everything looked to be what I would expect in terms of providing good direction for the trustee and clear instructions, that sort of thing. So he decided to go back to his lawyer, had us put in to administer his estate. Now, he had been telling me, I just don't, he was 71, 72 years old, so not up there, but he had significant cardiac issues. And he said, I'm going on a cruise up to Alaska. And he says, I really have a feeling this is going to be the last cruise. I said, oh, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I hope you're wrong. As it turned out, it was. He went on his cruise, and when he got to, I think it was Ketchikan, he ended up getting life flighted off the ship and from Ketchikan Hospital to a hospital down in Washington, Bellingham, I believe. And then I had the last conversation I had with him was from his hospital bed in the hospital in Bellingham. But he told me when he was sitting in my office, he said, I'm going to tell you everything I've got. I'm going to tell you everywhere you need to look to find all my stuff. We all got stuff. He was fairly good at it, frankly. He was, I would say, a minimalist. That was a really good term. He lived in a really nice little motorhome. He parked it with some friends here in the Black Hills during the summer months, and in the winter months, he was either in Arizona or Las Vegas. And everything he owned was pretty much in that little RV. So he told me exactly where to find his binder. And I love it when people say that, because it makes it so much easier than searching through room after room and stacks of paper. And you know the schmear. And that's why you guys do what you do, which is an outstanding service, by the way. Well, I'm looking forward to referring clients your direction, John, for that very reason. This fella had put together a binder. He said, in that binder, you're going to find everything you need. All of my accounts are online. All my bank accounts, investment accounts, they're all online. All of the passwords and login information for all of them are within that binder. Copies of my trust, pour over will, durable powers of attorney, all the good stuff that everybody should have, all in that same binder. Keys to safe deposit boxes, the whole 9 yards, it was all in there. And so after he passed away, I tracked down the RV. We entered that under dual control, of course, and collected all that stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with the series, TV series Monk.
Oh,
About an
absolutely.
obsessive compulsive detective. This guy was the walking, talking, breathing version of Adrian Monk. I stepped into his RV, absolutely spotless. Opened his closet. He told me the binder would be on the top shelf above the shirts. So I opened the closet. There's like 8 shirts, all blue Oxford button-down shirts, ironed and hung up. 3 pairs of shoes that were all identical underneath, perfectly polished and lined up. And the binder was right on the top shelf, exactly where he said it would be. So we were able to handle, he thankfully didn't have any real estate in any other states, no real estate at all, in fact. He had left specific directions on where to, he had a little Mercedes sports car that he distributed to some folks, and the RV had instructions for distributions for that. And also had a couple of safe deposit boxes, one in Las Vegas and I think one in either Scottsdale or Phoenix proper, and gave us instructions on those. And so we were able to access those. We found a fair amount of cash in his RV that he told me where to look for it. And he had a significant amount of cash in the safe deposit box in Las Vegas and also the one in Arizona. All went smooth, so smooth. And he had no family. He'd never been married, had no kids. His folks were deceased. and he had left everything. And he had a pretty modest, sizable estate. It was 2 to 2.5 million. So all of it went to a sporting charity, excuse me, in Colorado. And what a phone call to make.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
How'd
Yeah.
you like $20,000? Oh, that would be great. Well, what if I
It,
told you it was 2 million? Oh, you better talk to the executive director.
that
Gladly.
that's above my pay grade, but
That was so much fun. But that
wow.
whole process just went beautifully. It was so smooth. We were in and out, over and done, and distributed the whole thing, all taken care of, very, very quickly. And I contrast that with the nightmare, if you're ready for that. So
Yeah, well, on
get
the
this.
first story, that's phenomenal. I mean, just the fact that obviously the individual knew the importance of making sure that when the day comes,
Sure
right,
did. Yeah.
that have things in order. But to be proactive and think, hey, I've got this heart condition. This might be my last cruise.
Mhm.
Um, Probably didn't think it would happen while he was on the cruise per se, but
I don't think so.
to have things go that smoothly and
Yeah.
and interesting for someone that age, living a minimalist lifestyle, right, in a trailer, and then in the summer up in the beautiful Black Hills, and wintertime down in Arizona or Nevada.
Yeah.
You think, yeah, he's in the trailer, he doesn't have much, right?
Mm.
But he had
He
a
did.
lot. And that's what I tell people. I mean, you might not think you have a lot, but
Right.
you got stuff. And whether you have an estate that's worth $20 million, or
Mm.
just by the time they sell your house and your assets and those things. I mean, heck, if any of our listeners in California and you're a homeowner, I mean, that's probably worth $2 million by itself, right?
Easily.
So
Yep.
so think about it,
Yeah.
and get the planning done like this gentleman did, because
Yeah.
it can be smooth. So
Honestly,
now
that's
scare me, my friend.
okay. So, same bank I was working for, we had a teller that was pretty well experienced, and she had known this gentleman from previous experience at another bank. But one Saturday morning, I was a bank officer in charge, and a gal comes through the drive-through and wants to cash a check on this old fellow's account. And our teller, being astute that she was, first of all, she knew he didn't write checks. Something's up. And so she calls me up to the front, and I said, you know what, let's just kind of put a hold on that. We'll get, no cash back, and we'll see how this goes, but come Monday. And so in the meantime, Monday morning, I was able to contact some of his family. He had some family in northern Arizona and over in Wisconsin. And so we reached out to them. Um, Come to find out, he was in the hospital here in Spearfish with pneumonia, not doing well at all. And the family had expressed concern to us about his housekeeper. And she was the one who was trying to pass the check for cash on his account at our bank, which we stopped, thankfully. Um, Ultimately, family ended up hiring our trust department and engaging us to step in and seek appointment of conservatorship over him. And his sister was appointed guardian and appointed us through the court system here to step in as his conservator. Ultimately, he ended up not being able to go back home because of his health. He ended up in the hospital for a fair amount of time and was discharged to a local nursing home for a brief period. In the meantime, we have to go and secure his house, take care of the pets that he had in the house still, which we did. But as I stepped onto the back porch, it was actually a double wide mobile home in a little tiny town about 15 miles out of Spearfish. And I stepped onto the back porch it was a cupboard with a door, and I'm looking at the stacks of corporate, turned out to be corporate annual reports that he had stacked on his porch. And I started flipping through them, and no two of them were alike. So I thought, okay, either this guy has a strange, affinity for collecting corporate annual reports, or we got something going on here. As soon as I picked one of them up, started flipping through it, and dividend checks started falling out that were year and a half, 2, 3 years old, for fairly substantial sums. I said, okay, we need to get totes, some Rubbermaid totes, all this stuff we need to collect and take it back to the bank, because we're gonna have to go through all this. Then we got in the house, and he was a hoarder, and it was just, there were documents scattered everywhere, proxy votes, dividend checks. We found dividend checks that were, some of them were 4 years old. And it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. He had lived with his twin brother. Neither one of them had married. They both were brilliant in their day. They both graduated. One graduated from West Point, and our client graduated from the Naval Academy in Annapolis. It's not like they were no stranger to planning, certainly. And but in this event, planning didn't happen at all. He had lost his brother about 5 years before he ultimately passed away. We got involved about 2 years before he died, and thankfully, we were able to preserve his estate and what was left of it. Turns out, after researching and kind of backdooring into things, we requested transcripts of his tax returns and all, got copies of all the 1099s, everything like that had been sent to him. We were able to track down our operations crew, to their credit, spent countless hours going through his stuff, and we tracked down 550 separate investments, and the majority of them were in direct registration. They were not through brokerages. He had one internet-based platform that he had some investments on, and we were able to pull a few teeth and a few hair out of our head and finally got them to shake that loose and get us recognized with authority, which took some doing. But yeah, 550 separate investments, most of them domestic, but there were a handful that were in France, Australia, Foster's Lager, which was kind of cool, and Italy, actually. So he had investments all over the place. And,
Let me
we
just
concluded,
jump in. Let me jump in for a minute. So here's this older guy, kind of a hoarder. You find all this stuff. Turns out he's got 550 investments across the globe, right? Were you able to find out from the brother or other family, how do you like invest in all these companies? I mean,
the best they could come up with was that the boys' father had owned a chain of lighting stores in Wisconsin, up around Green Bay and around Wisconsin a little ways. And he had died when they were fairly young. I think they were like 17, somewhere in there. And when they turned 18, he and his brother inherited about $100,000 each. The chain of stores was sold to another family member who bought them out, and they pocketed each about $100K. And after they did their stint in the military, they got out, came back to the States, and the two of them just buddied up and traveled around the world together. I mean, they went everywhere, always together, never separated until the one fella passed away a few years prior. So they had the best the family could say is, we think they'd sit down at McDonald's for breakfast and a cup of coffee every morning, and they just start talking about stuff and what's going on, and looking at newspapers and looking at the Wall Street Journal and going, hey, maybe we should buy some of that. Okay, yeah, let's do that. So they just accumulated and accumulated and accumulated to the point where after our fella passed away, once we got done looking through everything, he had roughly 4.8 million in assets. And at that time, was it 2009? I think he died in 2010. So there was no estate tax that year. but had there been, it would have only been a $5 million exclusion had 2009's exclusion carried over. So he kind of pulled the George Steinbrenner thing and died in the right year. But he was close. He was very close. And any market swing, within a few days, market swing could have changed that number and pushed it right over the edge. So, and they had nothing.
What could prevent a scenario of this case? I mean, so if they're just me and I've got all these investments and things, with things like investments, can those be handled through a trust? Is there payable on death or beneficiaries?
Oh, absolutely.
Various investments.
Yeah. Oh, you bet. There's always options like joint tenancy, which I'm not a big fan of. There are better methods to do that. Payable on death would have been certainly helpful. Even if he had a couple of surviving siblings and he could have named them all, as POD. Trust absolutely would have assisted, would have avoided the necessity of an intestate probate, which is what we ended up having to go through. So we did the intestate probate, collected everything, paid the bills, which there weren't many, dealt with the real estate, got it sold and gone. His pickup, his trailer, his camper trailer that he still had, and liquidated all of the personal property stuff, farmed the pets out. The cat disappeared. We don't know where he went, but he had two huge dogs that had, by the time we got into the house, the place was a disaster. In fact, it was so bad. One of the legal counsel that we had involved with us, she was, I don't know, about 7 months pregnant at the time. She stepped on the back door and said, "I'm not going in there." So we went in with gloves and masks on and collected everything. I think we ended up with like 15 of those huge Rubbermaid totes of documents, just documents, and kept our back office crew pulling their hair out for quite a while.
Yeah,
but they did a great job. Had he just planned, if the two of them would have just, and it just baffles me with both of them having military experience, of anybody that would know how to plan an exit strategy. You'd think, okay, they would have had that figured out. Okay, we're not getting out of this alive. This is a terminal condition, 100%. We're all going to die. We got to do some planning. But no, that didn't happen. Not even powers of attorney, nothing. And at the point that they were, before the brother died, and I think even after our client passed, or up to that point, they hadn't had a whole lot of contact with family. They had a sister in Wisconsin and La Crosse. They had a brother in Mankato, near Mankato, Minnesota, and another sister down in Arizona. And so with contact with those three, we were kind of able to piece things together and sort of figure out, looking backwards, what had occurred. And the upshot of it is there was no exit strategy. There was no planning. And I would just encourage anybody, find competent legal counsel who's experienced with estate planning, or at least has enough of an interest in it to do it right. Honestly, lawyers are just like doctors. I mean, we have our niche, and you don't go to a cardiologist for a podiatry issue, and vice versa. So y'all do your homework and find somebody in the estate planning realm that can do a plan and then execute the plan. So,
yeah, exactly. As I was saying, apologize, listeners, if you get tired of hearing it, but a little planning goes a long way.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be expensive, and it will be far less expensive than what your family's going to go through, because
absolutely,
if you're intestate and have no plan, it is a probate case, and depending on the state you're in, I don't know how long it takes in South Dakota, but Laura, who was on our show a while back, who's in New York City, she said it takes 2 years to get on the docket. So if you've got a little something and think your money is going to pass to your kids or whomever quickly upon your passing, the only way that happens is if you have a proper estate plan in place, because otherwise
Absolutely.
they're going to sit around for a year, maybe longer, and say, geez, Dad, would have been that hard to just got a plan in place
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
couple of grand, right?
Yep. And the problems with that are many. I mean, from the frustration that they experience on their end, oftentimes that of course leads to a string of phone calls to the attorney's office. Why isn't this thing moving? What are you guys doing? What are you not doing? Why isn't this off a dead center? We've been doing this for a year. What's the holdup? And that's, they're not calling the court saying, how come this can't get done? They're calling the attorney and spending time and money. And like you've said, I don't know how many times, the $3,500 estate plan up front, it's either that or you can spend 35,000 on the other side of it to pick up the pieces and clean up the mess and get it where it needs to go. It's just really that simple, frankly.
Yeah. What do you want the experience to be like for your family?
That's it.
Yeah.
I don't like it when I'm sliding Kleenex or tissues across my desk for somebody who's having a meltdown because of something that really could have been avoided and should have been, and should have been much easier.
Oh,
It's sad.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just love the stories, I mean, we've had so many and we keep getting more and they change. I'm still waiting to hear about the person who's in the estate planning world because their parents but their parents passed and didn't have their own estate plan. That's the story I'm waiting for, right?
Yeah,
So that's why I'm doing it. I mean,
yeah.
I talked to a lot of people who have dealt with losing family members who didn't have a plan, but not one that was actually an attorney, right? Oh man, it's funny.
Hard lessons sometimes.
Is there anything else as we kind of wind down on our time here that you'd like to share with our audience? Is there a question that I didn't ask that maybe you wish, man, I wish you asked me that?
I guess I would just reiterate the point, especially to clients. Get it done. I met with some folks this morning. They're both in their mid to late 70s, early 80s. It was like, yeah, we've been talking about doing this for, 5-10 years. He looks at her, she looks at him, and we've all been there. And it's just, we've decided, now's the time to get it done. I said, well, thank you. I can help you with that. Let's see what we can put together for you. And I'll spend, it's not unusual for me to spend 2 hours with clients in the first conference. And honestly, very little of it has to do with actual strategy. It has more to do with me finding out what makes them tick and what's important to them, and where they want their assets to go. And not so much just exactly where, but why, kind of the why behind it. So if I ever get called to the stand and say, well, Grandpa wouldn't have done this, and if he'd have been in his right mind, I can say, well, we spent hours going over this stuff, and I can trust me, Your Honor, this client was well in his right mind and knew exactly what he wanted to do and knew the why. So it's just plan. It's not that hard.
Yeah. When's the best time to get an estate plan done? Right now.
Now. Yes, sir.
Because tomorrow ain't promised, as they say, right?
Never guaranteed. Never guaranteed. You could be on a bridge somewhere and get hit by a ship, unfortunately. So stuff happens, unfortunately, and that's just life.
Absolutely. So, hey, I know you live up there in the beautiful Black Hills, South Dakota, and just a peaceful place. So I hesitate to ask you this question because, maybe your days aren't stressful, but I like to ask people, what's your favorite way to unwind after a long and stressful day?
Well, we still have 3 kids at home. My wife and I have homeschooled our kids this is I think our 20th year now. So I come home and unwind with family, and we do a lot of outdoor activities. My wife's not big on camping and backpacking. She just looks at me like I'm nuts. But I'll take the kids and we'll go backpacking. Summers past, we've gone over to the Bighorn Mountains, and when I tell her that, we start at 9,500 feet elevation, and then we carry our stuff in like 7 miles uphill to like 10,500 above tree line, she just looks at me like, you've got to be something wrong with you, boy. Something.
She just doesn't want to jump right in on that, huh?
No,
Yeah,
she's not having it for some reason. I can't figure it out.
Go figure.
But our kids and we've had some wonderful experiences out in the wilderness and in the Black Hills here in South Dakota. Beautiful. We did some backpacking. All 4 of the kids and I went out. Oh, it was last October, and it was just gorgeous. Weather was perfect. Had a nice view of Mount Rushmore from a few miles away, and it was awesome.
Wow,
so we do a lot of that.
Yeah, we do a lot of same. We live up, in the northeast part of North Scottsdale, where it's a lot of hiking and mountains, the McDowells and up to the White Mountains, and we do a lot of hiking, and that's where I find my happy place. Is on top of the mountains and watching the sunset down here.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah,
so,
I can relate to that.
Yeah. So last question for you today. How can our listeners get a hold of you, Mike? If they're up in your area, or are they just from some other part of the planet, but want to ask you a question?
Absolutely. Telephone number 605-340-4768 is where you can reach me by phone. Email at SD, as in South Dakota, trustman@gmail.com. And you can look me up on LinkedIn. Just search for Faith Mountain Legacy Services. I'll pop right up.
Awesome. Hey, Mike, this has been a lot of fun. I can't thank you enough for joining me today and
it's been fun.
sharing with our audience a bit about you, your firm, your practice, your history, your stories. Certainly eye-opening, and I'm extremely grateful for your time. A big thanks to all you, our audience, for joining us once again. Please feel free to reach out to Mike if you have any questions or concerns about your own planning. And to make it easy, Mike just mentioned his contact information. It'll all be included in the show notes at the bottom. So please reach out to him. And as always, my good friends, your life is your legacy. So plan ahead and make it a great day.